be Dr. Fix, but it could very well put one of the president's biggest promises in a fix. The new Senate bill will basically increase Medicare payments for physicians. Its price tag about $247 billion. And as the president promises not to do anything to add to the deficit, there is currently no plan to really pay for this. Ahead of the vote, Republican Senator John Thune with me right now. He will be voting no. Senator, what do you make of this? This is just sort of dropped like a grenade.
It's very telling that the first vote that we're going to make on health care, Neil, is to add $250 billion to the federal debt. And this did come out of nowhere, but I don't think it's an accident that they didn't include this in the Senate Finance Committee bill, because it would have put it out of balance. And they want to be able to say that the proposal, the health care bill, doesn't add to the deficit. Well, obviously, if you back out $250 billion in additional spending, it doesn't. But this clearly puts it out of balance, out of whack. But they decided, I think, to separate it out and to try and run this through and just borrow, from the future and deficit spend in order to accomplish it. It's something that all of us agree needs to be done. We've got to deal with the issue, the physician reimbursement issue.
Right.
There's just a question about whether or not you ought to borrow it and just add it to the debt. And that's clearly what the Democrats intend to do. We don't think it ought to be handled that way. It ought to be paid for.
Now, I think the argument for keeping it separate, Senator, is that it's a slightly separate issue, even though it's under the same umbrella. But I was looking at this and wondering, if you're doing something at home, let's say with your landscaping, and you recategorize something else and call it an electric utility, the bottom line is you are still spending that amount of money on something that you don't have money for, right?
Exactly. And whether you say they should have been in the bill or shouldn't, and by the way, the House did include it in their health care reform bill, but it's still borrowing $250 billion. Now, what we've insisted on is that we have a debate in the Senate where we have an opportunity to offer amendments that would pay for this. But as of right now, the Democrat leadership, I think, wants to just jam it through and borrow to do it. And when you just come off of a year when you had a $1.4 trillion deficit, which is 3 times larger than last year, which was the largest we've seen in a really long time, and we haven't seen deficits like this since the end of World War II, to think that the first vote that we're going to cast now, leading into this health care debate, is to add $250 billion to the federal debt, just strikes, I think, a lot of people, at least on my side of the aisle, and I think most Americans, is to be really wrong-headed. And so I hope that the leader, Senator Reid, will agree with Senator McConnell to make this an open process where we have an opportunity to offer amendments.
All right. Senator, always good having you. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Thanks, Neil.